What's up guys, Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp modeling tutorial for you. So last week we started a series where I was designing a workshop building inside of SketchUp. And so in today's video we're going to continue that process by starting to take our building to 3D and really kind of getting a feel for what the different implications are of our different design options. So today's video is brought to you by the SketchUp Essentials course. The SketchUp Essentials course is my start to finish course designed to teach you how to use SketchUp. So we talk about everything in SketchUp start to finish. It's got over 14 hours of instruction specifically designed to help you learn SketchUp step by step. So if that is something you're interested in, make sure to check that out at TheSketchUpEssentials.com/course. Now let's go ahead and just jump into it. All right, so quick recap. If you remember in the last video, we basically settled on two different design options for my workshop building, right? So we've got a bigger building, it's about 50 by 50, and then we've got a smaller building, which we've set up as a second option, that's going to be 40 by 40. And so we're really going to look into the implications of these, and I think we've done about as much studying on these two-dimensional drawings as we can. So now what we need to do is we need to come in here and start modeling this out in 3D so we can really start getting a feel for what the space is going to be like. One thing I didn't do that I should have done in the last video is I just created these tabs just by hiding different things, but what I want to do is I actually want to create groups that I can turn on and off with tags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a tag right here, and we're just going to call this option 1. I'm going to create a second tag and call it option 2. So now I have two options in here that we can use in order to turn things on and off. And then I want to go into my outliner, which is where we can manage our geometry, and we're going to rename these two options. And so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to call this space planning option 2. And then the other one we're going to call space planning option 1. And so the reason that I'm going to do this is because I want to be able to toggle these on and off using tags. And so what I want to do is let's start by modeling out the footprint of this building in 3D, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I want to be outside of this group, right? My space planning is specifically there to be space planning, so I don't want to extrude that to 3D. What I want to do instead is I want to draw another face on top of it. So I just use the rectangle tool to do that. But then I'm going to push-pull this up, and I want to make sure that I have a height of at least 11 feet on either side. So I'm going to push-pull this up to 11 feet. And I'm just going to delete out the top, and I'm actually going to delete out the floor as well. And so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking specifically at the overall height of the building. So I know, for example, that this is going to have a height of 11 feet. And so what I really want to do is I want to analyze how tall the building is going to be in the middle if I add my sloped roof. So we live in Colorado, and so we get a fair amount of snow, and so because of that I'm probably going to want the pitch of my roof to be something like 6 to 12. And so what I want to do is the first thing is what a 6 to 12 would look like is that would look like for every 12 inches over we'd go 6 inches up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a little line in here, and we're going to call that 12 inches right here, and then I'm going to draw a line up that's 6 inches. And so then I can come in here with my protractor tool and I can measure that angle. And so I'm just going to activate this tool. I'm going to single click on this point. I'm going to click here to set a base point. I'm going to click again in order to set a second point. Notice how that didn't create a guide in here, which is what I want. So I want to make sure I tap that control key when I do this. So click, 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 and that's going to create a guide. And so we can also use this to measure what that angle was. So in this case, that angle is going to be 26.6 degrees. Well then, I can come over here and I can do the same thing on this side, right? So I can just click, click, and then type in a value of 26.6 and hit the enter key. Well, what that does is that lets me know where the center of my building is going to be. Well then, I can come in here and I can fill this in just like this. And one thing that I find helpful when I'm modeling like this is I want to make the roof a different group than the walls. So I'm going to erase out this edge. I'm just going to double click, right click, and I'm going to make it a group. And we're just going to call this roof. Then I'm also going to triple click on my walls, right click, and make them a group, and I'm going to call these walls. Well, now we have three groups in here associated with our option, right? So what I want to do is I just want to do a control click, and I want to select all of them, and I'm going to put them in a group. All right, so we're going to right click on that object in the outliner, and we're going to call that option 1. And if you go inside of it and look by clicking the little drop down, we have options for our roof, our space planning, and our walls. And so we can set these up with an option 1 tag on the overall group. So we're just going to call this option 1, and now we can toggle the whole thing on and off. And we're also going to create a tag for roof. And we're going to put the roof tag, or the roof geometry, on the roof tag so that we can toggle that on and off as well. And so now I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to model out this roof like this, and I'm going to set this up so that my option 1 shows my option 1 toggled on. So we're just going to come in here and right click and click on update for our view, and then for option 2 we're going to set it up the same thing, but with the other option showing up. So for option 2, I'm going to toggle off option 1. Then we're just going to do the same thing. So we're just going to model a rectangle over this. We're just going to pull it up 11 feet. Delete this. Delete our extra wall. And then, because these share, then I'm going to erase out these guidelines and just drop them in here again real quick with the protractor tool. I'm going to set my organization up the same way, and then I'm going to draw my roof. Then I'll put all 3 of these in a group, and I'm going to call this option 2. And we'll put those on the option 2, or we'll put that group on the option 2 tag. So now I can toggle on and off my option 1 and my option 2. And I'm just going to update this so that I can toggle between them. And so now what we have is we have these 2 options in here where we can start analyzing things like the height. So for example, if I come in here and I use the tape measure tool, I can see that the overall height of this building is going to be something like 23 feet. If I switch to my option 2, I can check, and the overall height of this building is going to be less. It's going to be more like 20 feet. So I can look at this and figure out the sizes of the various options. And so now what I want to do is I want to start cutting openings in my walls so that I can start getting a feel for what this space is going to feel like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a working view for each one of these. And so to do that, I'm just going to create a view with the roof turned off. And so now I can come in here and cut openings for my garage doors. So what I'm going to do for each one of these is I'm going to open them up, and then I'm going to draw in some openings. And I can just delete out the geometry that makes up those openings. I'm actually going to delete out the edges down here as well so they're not accidentally healing back in here. So I can do this for both of these, and then I can also rough out some walls in here. And so this is going to allow me to really get a feel for the size of these objects. One thing I like to do is I like to bring in some 3D warehouse objects just to really help me feel out the space and feel what it would feel like if I was actually in the space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the 3D warehouse and I'm just going to pull down some example models. And so I'm going to pull in the Chevy Silverado model from Barack Tazdemir. Just because it's the dually version, it has 2 wheels, so it'll probably give us a better idea of how this would fit in the space. Usually I don't pull in models with this kind of a file size, but for what we're doing right here, it's going to make sense. And so I'm just going to bring this model in, and I'm going to place it right here. And so one thing I'm noting is there's kind of a big open bounding box on this one, so I'm just going to right click on it and I'm just going to explode it. And so there's a bunch of extra stuff up here that we're not going to worry about too much for right now. We may need to fix that a little bit later. But for the moment, this is going to work just fine. So I'm going to pull this truck over here. I'm going to create a copy. And probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my base point on the ground. And I'm going to create a copy of this truck right here. Then I'm also going to pull a tractor model in. We'll go with this Kubota tractor by Benzo. And you might run into this issue where the bounding box isn't aligned with an object. We can fix that just by double clicking in here and setting the axis to align with the direction that you want the bounding box to go. So in this case, I'm just going to set the model axis right here. And so now if I escape out of this, I'm actually going to set this object axis based on this T right here, because I know that that's aligned the way that I want this to be. And then I'm just going to take these three objects, I'm going to put them in a group like this. We'll just call it equipment, and I'm going to drag it inside of my option 1 group. That way, when I go back to my option 2, you can see how that's going to be turned back off. And there's some things that we're going to have to fix in here, which is fine. But I'm going to do the same thing for my smaller building. And then you can just copy and then do an edit, paste in place in order to paste that equipment over here as well. And you may need to align it a little bit because the layout of this space is different. But what this is going to do, again, is give you kind of a feel for how the things are going to lay out in this space. And so now we've got a bigger option in here and a smaller option that you can toggle back and forth between and figure out what the spacing is going to look like inside of the building. So there's a lot more I want to look at, which I'll probably do off screen. I'm going to add some gym equipment, some other stuff like this, just to kind of get a feel. But one other thing that I do is I like to bring the camera in at my height, just so that I can look at this. So one thing I like to do, for example, is turn on a layer with the roof and then create a camera view looking into this space from a little ways outside of this, right? And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to click over into the large tool set and I'm going to use the position camera tool in order to set this view. Well, with the position camera tool, what you can do is you can type in a value, so in this case 6 feet, and hit the enter key. That lets you set your camera view at a height above the ground. So what that does is that allows you to save a view that gives you a really good idea of what everything's going to feel like. And so I might come in here and change my field of view as well. So I'm just going to click on the zoom button, then type in a value of 60 and hit the enter key, maybe something like 50. But that's going to allow me to save a view that really lets me feel what the space is going to feel like. So I would add a scene. We would call this option 2 entry. And I would create the same scene for option 1. And then I can toggle back and forth between the two to get an idea of what the difference is going to be between the larger and the smaller options. So really what I'm trying to do with this step of the process is really get a feel for how tall the building's going to be, what I could fit in there, and how much space there would be when I do that. So there's definitely some more steps, but in the next video we're going to talk a little bit more about adding like door and window openings and other things like that. We might even start looking at cost as well to do kind of a comparison between the two buildings. But for right now, if you have any questions or comments about what I'm doing with this series, leave a comment below and let me know. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. If you like what I'm doing in this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Every little bit helps, so make sure you check out that link in the notes down below. But in any case, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.